Hello, and welcome to the Bitfluencer podcast, where we spotlight the brightest projects in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Joining us today is Efrat Fenningsson. And if you don't know her, she is a fearless advocate for Bitcoin and for human rights, exposing hidden agendas and championing financial sovereignty. Hello, Efrat, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing my best.
Also joining us today are the boys from Bitfluencers, Swiss and Nov. How are you guys?
Hi, Efrat. So happy to meet you
Hi.
again.
Hi, Efrat. So cool to have you with us tonight.
It's so cool to have you guys.
I think it's very natural that today our conversation is going to be centered around Bitcoin and human rights, because I think Efrat can teach us a little bit about what is happening in our ecosystem that helps drive empowering in our communities. So Efrat, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about how you're involved with Bitcoin, how you're involved with human rights, and that way we can get started.
Okay. So I started getting involved with human rights, I think, when I became a human this time round. And I always cared about preserving my rights for freedom. And as I was growing up, it took different shapes and forms. And I was always active in one way or another. Sometimes it was for women's rights, sometimes it was for people who hold careers and need to have kids, and like, how can you do it all? And other times it was political. But really, I think the biggest slap in the face I got was during COVID, when not only the political sphere in Israel was going crazy, and there was the Enabling Act, basically ruined democracy in the country. It was like a hidden kind of authoritarian regime, and most people didn't understand what's happening. So I tried to educate people about the Enabling Act and how it's ruining the rules, the rule of law and the rules of democracy in Israel. And I went to the streets and I joined the demonstrations and the protests for a couple of years to try and shed light on the corruption of the politicians and the members of parliament. And people think that this protest or this era was successful, because by the end of it, we managed to replace the government. But I think that that's an illusion. I think that that's the game. And it took me time to kind of wake up to that as well, and understand that this is all a game, that the left and the right are in cahoots together, and there's an illusion of democracy, and you get to choose between the left and the right, but really they're all like versions of the same agenda. And then I started learning about the global agendas, that, these are just the policy executors, where really there are the policy makers, which are on the top of them. So I started looking at organizations like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization. It was in great synchronization with all the COVID measures and mandates that were put here in Israel and all around the world. And I then had to kind of make a conscious decision whether I am taking the same path here with COVID, and I continue to speak out and be even less popular than just being on the streets for political reasons. Now it's like, my bodily autonomy and the discrimination against people that didn't participate in the dubious health experiment that we were going through. And I was coming from a very privileged position, working in tech, in startups, and having a very senior position. And for many years, like, known in the industry, managing a lot of people, a lot of like big budgets, global companies. And I had a really good name and reputation in the industry. And I had a full-time job as a CMO of a pretty medium-sized to large company in Israel's terms.
So
And I decided, I made the decision that I'm
one thing
continuing
or
to
two
speak
about
out.
marketing.
Sorry, Stefan, were you saying something?
Yes, I'm saying that if you were a CMO, you could give us some hints, to us Bitfluencers.
I've been doing that for 20 years. So yeah, so I took the decision to be part to belong, like actively, for people to know that I belong to the marginalized group now, to the minority of those that didn't want to take the vax and that are fighting for their sovereignty to decide whatever they want on their body. And I'm not going to participate in any experiment if I don't want to. And I'm not going to be part of the discrimination of people in this country that is supposed to be like the safe haven for Jewish people around the world and for Israelis. And also, I'm not going to be allow anyone to coerce me into anything. And so I became very vocal about that. And since I carried on being in the streets and protesting and everything and talking about it, creating content about it, I started creating a lot of content in English because many people didn't know what's happening in Israel, what really is happening in Israel. They were just fed by the lies of the mainstream media. And as I started doing that, it all went viral because people were apparently thirsty for some truth, and they kept asking me to do that more and more. As I was working in my full-time job, being a CMO of a company, I was also starting to be like a content creator and creating all those videos and content about what's happening in Israel and all of that. And at that point, it was no longer about deciding whether I'm going to do this for a certain topic or not. It became a way of life. Like I have to speak out. I found my voice. I understand how much impact my voice is making around the world and for the people in Israel. And I'm this bridge between what's happening around the world and what is happening here. And I'm not afraid to speak the truth. I was definitely paying heavy prices for it and still am from time to time, but with time my skin's getting thicker and I'm getting better at it to still speak the truth and absorb the heat, but keep going. Yeah, so since I discovered Bitcoin, which was like the beginning of 2022, I felt like there is a real solution that I can now not only find my personal hope in, but also deliver that message to people that don't know that exists and don't even see they may see at least my audience, they see the health scams, they see some of the political scams, but they don't see the money scams. They don't understand it. So, I took on that as well. Now I'm going to educate people on Bitcoin. And you know what it means. If you want to educate about Bitcoin, you have to educate about money. So that's a big journey and a big thing. And so I started doing that too. And that's where my podcast was born. I think after about a year of learning Bitcoin, I felt more or less ready to start talking about it and interviewing people on my podcast about it. And so my podcast is quite wide because it has peoples from different walks of lives. And as I was understanding money and Bitcoin more, I was bringing more and more economists and money people and Bitcoiners to the podcast. I think now I love it. I mean, I want to keep it that way, that my podcast will continue to be quite varied and wide with the topics that I touch, with the people that I bring on. And it's not just a Bitcoin podcast, but I definitely try to help my audience who is red pilled to be orange pilled with time. Some of them get upset with me, some of them like it, some of them thank me. Well, like any group in society, there are different people in different groups with different styles as well. My audience is very um they don't spare me with what they think. Sometimes it's like harsh stuff, and I have to answer back to them and kind of put people in their place from time to time. And it's like, fucking hell, I'm giving you all this content for free. Just, if you don't like it, you can go. Here's the door. But at least be respectful for someone who is creating content for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think
if you guys don't listen to Efrat, you will be forced to the right hand side of the path.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I try to tell them. You guys you're going to go down that path, down that slavery path. And the ones that are too afraid of learning about money and Bitcoin, they yell at me, but we have cash. And then I try to educate them about fiat again and tell them that cash is fiat and it's a good short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution anyway. But they don't want to listen. They want to yell. They want to be angry. So, but some, as I said, many people do. They do listen and they take it, which is great. And again, it's their choice. It's fine. They may not be ready, or they may choose not to like it or embrace it, because it means that they have to make changes in their lives. So I really think that people have a free will and they have the right to choose, and it's really okay. I respect everyone and their choices. They will just have fun staying poor, I guess.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think you have a really inspirational backstory and journey. And sometimes people don't appreciate the risks that you take when you tell the truth. I mean, it's a little bit scary, not just in terms of your ego and putting yourself out there, but it's literally dangerous sometimes. Some of the information that you want to share and that you want other people to understand, it can be dangerous to be an advocate of that information. And it's just important, you speak to the people who are right for you and who are ready to listen, and the ones who aren't ready, well, their time will come.
Or not. Or they will never listen, and that's fine too. Yes, and that's a really hard lesson that I had to learn, because many people try to tell me, sometimes when people first see me and my content, they get so excited and they go, "Oh, thank you so much for speaking out, and thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's so important. But can you do it a little bit like that so that I can send it to my mom or to my wife or to my auntie, because she doesn't know anything and I want her to listen to you?" And I'm like, listen, first of all, this is my number one rule. I don't do what other people tell me to do because they want me to do it a certain way. Say what I have to say the way I have to say it. I have to keep being with integrity to myself and to my own style and trail of thought. Like I have a reason why I do things the way I do them. And I would not let anyone, including sponsors or anyone, dictate what I cannot say, how I need to say it, in what way I need to say it. I do things my own way. So that's my number one rule. And my number two rule is I'm not for everybody. I don't think I'm for your mom that doesn't understand anything. And then you give some 3 hours podcast of me talking about Agenda 2030, and she'll get it's like a 5-ton sledgehammer on her head. You know what I mean? It's too
Yeah.
much. So that's my number two rule. You need to let people take their time and do their journey on their own pace. And
Yeah.
it has to come from their own choice, because if it doesn't, and if
Mhm.
you try waking up people, it's like orange peeling people, right? You have to understand and remember that there's always a boundary and you have to respect it. You can project your voice and be responsible for what you say, how you say, and who you say it to. Okay. And then at one point, there's that boundary. And if you cross it, then you can interfere with someone else's free will and free choice. And
Yes.
so you need to respect that at one point you stop and they start. And it's not all up to you. You cannot orange pill someone and be the only one active in this engagement. They have to be active as well. If they don't choose to take it, they will never be orange pilled. Same thing about waking up to any topic, any agenda.
Do
Yeah.
your own
So
No, I
research.
it's
fully
really
agree.
important to listen to where people are at. And that's why I try to explain to my followers who may be very excited, I'm not for everyone. I may be for someone who had already woken up and now wants to go deeper, okay? Or for more advanced people, And I'm not Whitney Webb either, which is like super advanced, I'm like somewhere in the middle, I think, in the funnel. So it's important to understand that and to know how to direct your audience.
Yeah, we can only open the door to the rabbit hole, but we can't push them in. And basically, everybody has to go through their own journey, and we can't
Yep,
save them all.
that's
We can
right.
do our best, but we can't save them all.
And you know
It's a
what? It's
two-way
not even
street.
about saving. That's another thing. It's another false construct, I think. When we take ourselves so seriously that we think that we're saving someone, it means that that we're superior, like they're in a position of inferiority because they need saving. No one needs saving. Each person has their own karma and their own journey, and it's perfect. And that's exactly the right thing for them.
Mm.
And you have the right one for you. And I don't need to save anyone. I mean, I'm here to do my role, and my role is to speak out so that you can take value from it and then plan your life accordingly. But if you choose not to see anything ever and resist everything and just carry on in the same way you've been operating, then there's a reason for that. And I respect that. And you keep
Mm.
going. And I don't need to save you. It's like,
Yeah, true.
right? So that's like the savior thing is it's so much embedded in our culture. And
Mm.
that's why I see people now getting so hyper excited about Trump and Musk. And I'm like, great, okay, they started doing some good stuff, right? No, like we can't take that away from them for sure. But there's a distance between appreciating their actions and looking at them as saviors, and then just like putting all of our hopes onto them or anyone else or any other figure, right? Me or
Yeah.
anyone. So I'm like, I always tell people, you got to remember, you are your own savior. If there is such a thing as savior,
Yeah,
it's you for
helping might
yourself.
be the
Like
right
find the
word,
power
right?
within.
Instead of saving, helping might be
Right.
the
Or
way
just
to
like
put it.
empower yourself, find your power within, because we are very powerful creatures and we forget that. And we do have a lot of power within us. Sure, we can assist in other people, we can create bonds and
Mm.
collaborations and partnerships and make ourselves even stronger when we're together. And we can also play the game, quote unquote, with other people, even politicians, to reach a common goal. That's great, but don't look at them as if what they do fails or if they're taking us the wrong path, then you're going to be devastated because of that. No, you have to remember your sovereignty, right? And
Mhm.
take responsibility for good and bad. So yeah.
I like to play a little bit of devil's advocate because I don't like to assume like where people are in their journey. So I like to be like try to be specific when we can. So one of the questions that I have for you is like, which quality about Bitcoin do you feel is the one that brings the most empowerment or that supports human rights the most? Because like Bitcoin can be immutable, it can be an immutable ledger, it can be money, it can be like it has different qualities. So which one of those qualities do you think is the one that's the most empowering in terms of human rights?
Well, the fact that it's permissionless, I think as long as it's held in self custody, I think that is the strongest power of Bitcoin. You hold your own asset, your own Bitcoin, and you don't need to ask permission from anyone to move it or to do anything with it. I think that's a superpower. And if we will dive deeper now to CBDCs, as I saw you guys wanted to talk about this, then I will show you why I think that this is the superpower of Bitcoin. When you look at it in the broad scheme of things, of financial things, of the different financial digital tools that are out there for us to use today. And the general trend in the traditional finance today is to have everything permissioned and everything identified. And Bitcoin is not great in terms of being unidentified. So privacy is not easy to achieve in Bitcoin. It's not that it's not possible, but it's harder. And I think you have to be like an advanced Bitcoiner in order to preserve your privacy in Bitcoin. But what is definitely available for everyone is permissionless as long as it's in self custody, and also it can be non KYC. And so you'll see that the trend is to have everything permissioned and identified. And the only thing standing in 180 degrees from that is non KYC Bitcoin. It's the only thing. It's like no permission from anyone, and you can be unidentified if you want to, pseudo and anonymous, and it's difficult, that and cash, and there are trends to try and abolish both. I mean, they can never stop Bitcoin, and the fact that that train is left and it can never be stopped, it's another superpower, the fact that Bitcoin cannot be stopped. I mean, theoretically it can, but it can be limited, it can be regulated to death.
It's
But it's hard to kill it, really.
it's kind of openly known now that Bitcoin mining is a little bit centralized. Do you think, because I mean, we can only speculate about what miners are going to do. We can't really know what they're going to do. And if they started to censor transactions, it would be like a huge threat to people's belief in Bitcoin. Do you think like this is a real threat, that miner centralization is a real threat to permissionlessness? Or do you think that the miners will not self-destruct by doing that to the network?
I'm not a mining expert, but I am following other miners that are teaching me about it. And I've listened recently to Bob Burnett on a really great panel that I recommend everyone to listen on the Bitcoin Naples Day. In Naples, in Florida, they had a panel about mining. It's a 40 minutes panel where they talk about the threats of mining in Bitcoin. And I think that's a really good session. And yes, I think it's a real threat. Woo, what happened there? Is it just me?
She disappeared for a moment, but you
But
can
this is like,
Yeah,
this is cool. This is like in
yeah,
old
like a rainbow.
television
She's back.
days.
I could hear you. I just couldn't. You just couldn't see me, but I could hear you the whole time. So you can keep on going if you want.
But that
Yes,
was so
please,
cool.
please
Like
continue.
I think I haven't seen this frame since, I don't know,
Yeah,
the
like
80s or
the
90s.
80s.
It's like seeing snow again in analog TV.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
rainbow
Anyway,
colors, rainbow colors.
I think Bitcoin mining is a real threat, the centralization of it. And I think it's something that will be discussed more and more as we continue our journey into Bitcoin. And I'm not the best person to talk about it because I'm not a mining expert. I'm learning as well. But here's another threat or risk that I do want to put out there, which is something that I can say I'm a bigger expert at because of my background in marketing and communications. And that's the perception of Bitcoin. So here's what you have to understand. The phase that we're entering now, the phase of mainstream adoption, where you have nation states and enterprises coming into the game and starting to normalize Bitcoin, is a phase where we're going to see a lot of mainstream people coming into Bitcoin. And many of them, most of them, in fact, are going to come from the top of the funnel through ETFs or through other types of regulated channels like regulated stablecoins, for example, right? They may start with a regulated stablecoin, come into Bitcoin through there. That is very, very unlikely that they would hold Bitcoin in self custody. So we will see other groups of Bitcoiners. Whereas now, if someone speaks out on Twitter and says, I've moved all of my self custody Bitcoin into ETFs, everyone's like, wow, at them. All the maxis are like out of their pockets and starting to yell at it. This is going to become more and more mainstream. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if, these kind of people are going to be paid by some propaganda pushers to show the public that ETFs are good and you should hold your Bitcoin through ETF because it's safer and you have custodians, da 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 da, and banks will come into it. So the landscape is going to change and the picture is going to change, and the best way, and this is from experience, the best way to control something, a topic of the day, is through propaganda. And it's through the perception of the masses. Right? During COVID, you've seen the kind of propaganda that we were under and what kind of messaging they were pushing out there. It's a safe and effective. Everyone should take it. If you're not, you're risking grandma. They had all these narratives that would make you feel bad and that would draw the line for you very clearly: what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And that's the same thing that we're going to see with Bitcoin, because now that we've reached the stage where nation states have no more choice, and now it still looks like they have a choice, right? They're like playing the game. No, we're not putting it in strategic Bitcoin reserve. Yes, we are. No, we're not. No, he's doing it first. No, I'm doing it first. They're all going to come in at one point, right? It's probably going to be in the next 1 or 2 years. But as they're playing this game, they have decided that there is no more fighting it, like Putin said, right? You can't stop this. You can't fight this. You have to embrace it. And in parallel, there are existing experiments with CBDCs, regulated stablecoins, meme coins, shit coins, whatever you want. They'll try everything and anything because that's the stage we're in. They're going to fail in most of them, or at least they're not going to see wide adoption. We're going to slowly move to a wider adoption of Bitcoin as they will discover that none of the other shit works. And when we get to that point, what they want is a controlled population. They want a public that is okay using Bitcoin because there is no choice anymore. We cannot stop it, but they have to use Bitcoin the way we tell them to use Bitcoin, because then we can control an aspect of it. So controlling the perception, and this is one of the big risks. It's inevitability in my point of view. If I'm looking into the future, I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. You have to accept it. But it's not something that I like at all. I think it's a risk. I think it's not great for the original intended ethos of Bitcoin, that people will perceive Bitcoin as a permissioned KYC / AML kind of asset that they have to that they want to hold and will hold, but under certain conditions and certain guidelines. And the state will be a mediator, or the bank will be a mediator for them to that asset. Most of them will not even know that that concept of self-custody exists. It will be hidden from them. I mean, you and I now sit here and we may talk in the next, I don't know, half an hour about KYC and I'm sorry, about non-KYC Bitcoin, and about freedom, and about, taking custody of your own assets and things like that. In a few years' time, it may be, if we don't raise awareness to it and stop it, it may be even forbidden for us to speak about those things in light of all the free speech regulations that are coming out in all the different countries, right? They may tell you that encouraging people to hold non-KYC Bitcoin is an offense. They may tell you that. They're fucking crazy. I don't know what they can come up with, right? In the UK, they're putting people in jail for much less crazy things than that. We may find ourselves in a few years, or maybe even less, I don't know, in a position where a certain state have decided that you cannot even encourage people to take self-custody of their own Bitcoin, because most of the population is holding Bitcoin and they don't want them to know that they can do it that way, or that they can do peer-to-peer transactions. No, you have to go through an exchange. You have to go through a regulated exchange. And if you want to put it back into your bank, it has to go through there. And we have chain analysis to look at everything you do and see the track of your money, and that's possible. It's a possible trajectory. So I'm looping back to your question when you're asking what is the risk or the threat to Bitcoin. And we've put mining aside because I'm not the expert on that. If I look at the monetary landscape and what's coming down now with all the different digital monetary instruments that they're playing around with, and with the fact that their biggest and best and strongest tool is propaganda, I really think that they're going to put in the time and effort to educate, quote unquote, educate people on how is the right way to hold Bitcoin, what is permitted Bitcoin and what isn't, what are the permitted institutions that they can work with and what aren't. And most of society that are not eager to learn and do not want to, bother themselves with learning about fiat or Bitcoin or whatever, and it's most of the people in the world, they will be heard, they will be shepherded into this path of holding Bitcoin in a certain way, which is not what we want or intend. They will not be familiar with the different ways they can hold it. And in that way, Bitcoin will be controlled, but it will be controlled mostly from a mindset perspective. It will be very hard to break that for people. You and I will come to someone and tell them, hey, did you know that you can take self-custody of your Bitcoin? It's like, I'm fine with the bank saving my Bitcoin, whatever. It's just like, I don't have to worry about anything. Just don't bother me with all that bullshit. So I think that's the biggest threat. And I think we're going to see paid influencers and, guys are Bitfluencers. And I'm not saying you're going to be.
No, there's not enough money to.
I think you're going to be on the other side, but I think
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of shitheads, shitcoiners, getting money from governments and institutions to play a role in this propaganda. And I may be wrong also in my prediction, but it just seems it makes so much sense for me in light of the developments of recent years.
What you're saying is already happening. Like in Europe, you have to disclose the ID of the person that you're sending the money to if it's above a certain rank. And if it's your own wallet, then you have to send them a screenshot of your own wallet. Like what you're suggesting is already happening in a certain,
In
to a certain
exchanges, you
degree.
mean? In
Huh?
exchanges. You mean in exchanges
Even
it
things
happens?
like Strike, or
In any regulated
in any regulated service, if you want to send the money out, you already have to disclose like who is the beneficiary of that transaction. And
Yeah.
and every single like semi-seasoned Bitcoiner is probably thinking about boating accidents after this little spiel. I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think that the human component is the biggest threat, because that's why Bitcoiners like to say that the humans are the layer zero, and that's why I'm against hyper Bitcoinization, because it's very important that the people who adopt Bitcoin adopt it with certain like empowerment and knowledge, because the scalability of Bitcoin on chain is limited. And so there is a tendency towards custodial services because of this scalability situation. And that's why Lightning is so important for the survival of Bitcoin as a tool for human rights and for empowerment, because it's not realistic for every person in the world to do on-chain transactions. That's just never going to happen. And so Lightning really needs to work. We need to continue to like support Lightning projects that really are making a difference and that can really like help people non-custodially, because non-custodial Lightning is very difficult to do for like a regular person. So I think certain services that provide like semi-custodial, in the sense that the node is managed by the company, but they don't actually have control over the funds. That's like a midway where people, oh my God, excuse me.
And I will, yeah, as you're sneezing, I will add there that I don't want to burst the bubble, but I think you can be against hyper Bitcoinization as much as you want, but it's an inevitability. Like it's going to happen whether we like it or not. And the education is not going to be there for the masses, because I don't see the government that is going to put in the budgets to allow, Bitfluencers or any other great educator to teach people about it in a proper way. It will have to continue to be grassroots and bottom up, because top down it's going to look very different. I just interviewed Eric Stacks and released the episode with him yesterday. And one of the things he says in the end, when I ask him about the corporate takeover, and, we talked about BlackRock a bit and about nation states coming into the game. And he said, listen, as much as ideologically I don't like the fact that this is happening, I am still okay with the government or the state taxing me on the profit that I will make on Bitcoin, and knowing that I have it, then not having it at all and not letting Bitcoin thrive and become what it needs to become. So he's okay with paying the price, so to speak, of what Bitcoin is becoming, because he sees the bigger mission or the bigger purpose for Bitcoin to be the base layer money for humanity going forward centuries, and not just like a few years from now. And so in that bigger scheme of things, he's willing to pay the price of, the state knows what I have and the state taxing me on it, so that Bitcoin can become that and take us back to that digital gold standard. And I think that that's a very interesting and wise way of looking at it. I think we definitely have to keep our minds open to the fact that some things are happening whether we like them or not, and we may not like most of them. And some things are in our control in terms of education. And I think we really need to be minded on how to preserve our energy and take care of ourselves and our mental and spiritual physical well-being at this time, that we don't want to fight the wrong thing or in the wrong velocity. You know what I mean? Like if you now decided to dedicate your time and your life to educating people about non-KYC Bitcoin and Lightning and da 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 da, it's definitely a sacred mission, but is it worth it if we know the trajectory that things are taking? You know what I mean? I really believe that this time of chaotic changes that we're going through now started obviously in 2020 and just accelerating, and I think we're going to experience that till at least like the end of the century, decade 2030, more or less. I think that in these years we have to be smart instead of right, and we have to kind of preserve our energies and put them where it's most beneficial for us and our families. So yeah.
I have two more questions. The first one, I'm not sure how it fits in the context of everything that we've spoken about, because my question is, do you think people will understand that they need Bitcoin before they really need Bitcoin? But the way we've talked about Bitcoin, we've also talked about like adoption happening within people who don't need it and therefore are going to adopt it in the wrong ways. So how do you feel this question works in the context of what we've said so far?
If they don't know that it exists, they don't know that they need it, is my thought. I think that what they think they need, or what they feel that they need, is an investment vehicle that will not disappoint them, because they understand that their money is being debased. I mean, they just see the prices going up in the supermarket, like the common person. That's what they feel. And plus, if they experience some kind of government overreach, like I did during COVID and many people did, then they may start being suspicious about the state overreaching also other areas in their lives. Like they did it with my health, now they're going to do it with my property or my money. So how do I hedge my money? So I think that the ways in to educate people, like that's what I do, that the most efficient ways of educating people are through, one is the inflation and the pain that you feel with your money being debased, and two, with hedging what's yours and trying to protect your assets from the state or from others taking it. So I think that when you start talking to people about those two things, they cannot disagree with you. There's a common understanding for almost everyone that the value of our money is going down, purchasing power is going down. Why, they don't know, but they know that it's going down, and they know that the state may take what's theirs. Talk to them about their pensions, they're afraid. The government or the state may touch my pension fund, and they're afraid. So, but what do you suggest? How can I protect it? And then you have a way in. You can start talking to them about it. So, in marketing, we always look for I know people don't like that term, customer pains, the pain points. And these are pain points for people. The purchasing power and hedging of what's theirs. And this is mostly true in Western countries. It will not be the case in developing countries, because people, on the most part, don't have anything to care about in developing countries. They don't care about, the they live day by day. They don't have any savings. So you talk to them about hedging and pension funds, but they don't have that. But in Western countries, yes. But if you do talk to them about debasing currency, sure. So in every place, you have to find the right way in.
My other question is related to the pain points. Are there any situation of like current violations of human rights or recent violations of human rights that you feel that if they had been empowered by Bitcoin would not have been possible?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Can you try again?
Like a situation, maybe that is happening right now or that has happened recently, where if the people involved had already been empowered by Bitcoin, the situation could have been avoided or they could have like fared better given the circumstances if they had adopted Bitcoin.
You mean of any of the atrocities that we see around the world? Like just take your pick, like everything. Fucking hell, people, I mean, everywhere. It's like people are suffering the hyperinflations in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Argentina, in Venezuela. You count it. And then the same thing with people in war zones, like in the Ukraine, in Gaza, here in Israel, some of them, they're fucking suffering because they either don't have access to money or their money is being locked in banks that are crumbling or not functioning. I mean, the situation in Gaza, for example, with money is crazy. People don't necessarily like me talking about it because I'm Israeli and I'm Jewish and I'm supposed to like be the way they want me to be, but I don't give a fuck. And so if you look at Gaza, did you know that they don't even have their own currency? They work with the shekel, the Israeli shekel. The Israeli currency is Gaza's currency. Palestine in general, the West Bank and Gaza, they use the Israeli shekel because Israel is the controlling entity. And so they don't have a central bank. They don't print their own money. They use the Israeli shekel and they're in the whims of the Israeli government. If their banks, their commercial banks, are not receiving for some reason, maybe because of war, not receiving enough cash entitlements or loans from the Israeli central bank, then they are suffering and they don't have money. So that's another way of starving them, for example, or hurting them, right? No one will admit that they do that because we're such saints, but if you consider that that's a possibility and you can use that as a weapon as well and as a tool, then that's really hard. Now imagine that the Gaza economy, because they're so poor, they use cash only, right? They don't have credit cards. They don't have anything, hardly even have bank accounts, even though that there are banks there. It's a very poor society and therefore they use mostly cash. Even the shape of cash, the physical shape of the notes, the banknotes, is deteriorating because it's used so much inside the area. So now I wrote about it in my recent article about the cash situation in Israel and in Gaza. There is a new profession, for example, in Gaza of people that are taking banknotes and renewing them, trying to like save them. They put them in the sun, hanging them to dry. They iron them. Like seriously, it sounds like a fucked up story, but it's a reality. Just imagine the level of dependency that these people have on cash and that they have on another country that they're now in war with to give them that cash. It's like it's a double dependency and they're poor. And like just think of all these things and then think if they had Bitcoin, right? So I hope I answered your question with that.
Definitely. I like to be specific because I'm a hardcore Bitcoiner, so I kind of know the answers to these questions, although I hadn't seen it from that perspective, which was really beautiful hearing what you just said, because it really explains and really makes it tangible of why we're saying Bitcoin is a tool for human rights. It's one thing to say it and another thing to kind of really give people the picture of why this is true. So thank you.
And if we've also touched on the topic of Gaza, just a short comment on it, the destruction in the Gaza Strip is so wide right now that the project to rehabilitate this area is $80 billion worth. So now the real party begins? Who's getting the contracts to build back better, right? And was that the intention all along? Just like in Ukraine, right? Now we have a massive rehabilitation project in Ukraine. BlackRock is already in there with some massive real estate projects. Similar things are going to happen in Israel. Trump is coming out with all these weird suggestions of transferring the Gaza population to other countries. Like this is the fiat game that is being played over and over again in war zones. Let's create another war so that we can print more money, so that we can go in and rehabilitate and build back better. And coincidentally, it may also be building back according to certain agendas that we have of smart cities and surveillance and
Yeah, the 15 minute
green and,
meeting.
and carbon and all this crap. Yeah. So that's the vicious cycle that we're still in. Okay, you guys said you want to talk about CBDC, and we haven't touched it at all. And I prepared some stuff for you. Do you
Tell
want to talk
us.
about it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please go for it. I
Okay.
love the topic.
Okay, so I'm gonna share some.
I'm going to get a sweater. Give me 1 second.
Huh? How you going? Okay, let me share my screen.
Do you really love this topic, Swiss?
Yeah, CBDC. To be honest with you, I hate this topic, but
Same.
someone needs to talk about it. There are a few people that talk about it, but not many.
I'm
Wow, this
freezing where
is
I'm at.
stylish.
Now we're getting really dope here.
What?
Getting comfortable for the story time.
Amazing.
Yeah, I definitely don't love the CBDCs. I was just being ironic, It's a very important topic to discuss. So, and we're happy to have the expert here tonight.
Yeah, it's very
Right.
important.
So let me see. This is
What I get concerned about is like with the activation of CTV or like programmable money on Bitcoin, because those smart contracts make Bitcoin programmable. If we lose privacy and if we centralize the mining and we make Bitcoin programmable, how far away are we from Bitcoin being the CBDC? So I think, I mean, even though I'm being a little bit of a how do you call it? Fear and greed causing chaos. I do like to speak about the complicated things because I think it's in being aware of the dangers
so
that we can.
luckily for you, you invited a guest that is talking about those things. And if you let me just share a few things before I come to my answer to your question or to the conclusion, because you may have people watching this that are not aware of the landscape that we're in. There's a pretty complicated landscape that we're in right now, and it's not just CBDC. And Bitcoin is one of them. So I think people need to be aware of all the different instruments that are out there. So basically, this is what it looks like when nation states and traditional finance guys are now thinking about how the new monetary system is going to look like. And you have people like her. Let's listen to her for a second. Pipa Malmgren.
Financial structure is, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well.
So there are like two different parallels happening. Like Bitcoiners live in their own bubble and think that Bitcoin is the only thing that exists, but really we are in a race at the moment to create a new monetary system, a new digital monetary system that most people around the world will use. And we're at that phase that nation states are kind of ready to try anything. And they have had a lot of experiments with CBDCs already, and with two different types of CBDCs. So it goes between retail CBDC and wholesale CBDC. And I'll just say the difference between them. So wholesale is banks between themselves and nation states, like central banks between central banks and central banks to commercial banks. That's the wholesale part. And the retail part is the bank with the individual.
Mhm.
The retail CBDC is your end-to-end kind of service. And they've been trying, and they are still trying many different projects for that, for CBDCs. And in some countries, it's kind of catching on and they're still trying. And in other countries, it's kind of failing and they're trying other things. And in many other countries, they have tried and they've experimented and they're kind of waiting for other countries to adopt it before they do. So it's kind of that game theory, but on CBDCs. And there are other countries that are starting to experiment with other things. So if you want to take a zoomed out view, and that relates to your question as well, Danny. So I want to take a zoomed out view on what they like and what they don't like. So they really like everything that is, like Pipa Malmgren said, that is controlled. Like they want to have visibility over every transaction that is happening. And you can get that not just with CBDC, you can get that with many different types of, let's call them digital monetary products. So tokenizing assets and deposits so that it sits on a blockchain of BlackRock or other financial institutions is one way. You can regulate stablecoins or have stablecoins in commercial banks created by commercial banks or even by other entities like supermarkets, for example. Anyone can create their own coin, right? Stable coin or meme coin or whatever coin. And as long as it's regulated and it goes through the accepted channels, they're up for it. And we're going to see more and more of that happening. CBDCs, of course, KYC Bitcoin, which to your question is quite similar in many ways to those products. Not everywhere, not everything, but there are different levels of it. There's a scale, there's a spectrum here, and we're kind of ranking things on that spectrum. ETFs, of course, they know, they control, you don't even have the asset. And we're talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve and states and corporates all holding Bitcoin. This is all going to be known, right? This is all going to be public knowledge. Everyone's going to see your reserve if you decide to hold one, whether you have a private company or a public company. The things that they like less, as we said before, are non-KYC Bitcoin and cash. And the trend is to try and minimize that as much as possible, or even try to ignore that and pretend that it doesn't even exist. So as long as you're permissioned and identified, they like you and they'll work with you. Now, stable coins is interesting because apart from being like a bridge between fiat to Bitcoin or to crypto, a blockchain, like they like saying, the stable coins are a very important, I think, tool or product in order to keep the globalization of the US dollar alive, because most stable coins are going to be pegged to the dollar. Some stable coins are going to be pegged to the local currency, like you see here, CNGN in Nigeria that came out now, and bills in Israel. They're going to be pegged to the national currency, which is still pegged to the dollar. So in the end of the day, the dollar wins. It continues to globalize the dollar and create a strong hegemony for the US, which will ensure the US dominancy as the world reserve currency. The US dollar as the world reserve currency. And about stablecoins, you have today more than 70 projects that are featured in a recent report about bank issued stablecoins and tokenized deposits. So more than 70 projects around the world that are being like experimented with. And these are all solid players in the new digital monetary systems. Okay, so you gotta take that seriously because you have declarations like these.
Can you turn the volume higher, please?
they don't even hide it anymore. So it was like a conspiracy theory from Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb, and now they're like saying it out loud. Yeah, stablecoins is a good tool for them. Yeah, Danny, you're on mute. Hello? No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Maybe replug your microphone. Okay, I'll keep going. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So here's another funny one. You're going to love this one. By the way, this is from my recent presentation, which I'm showing in the different conferences I speak around the world. This one, when I found this one, I loved it because you as Bitcoiners, you're going to appreciate what they're trying to do. Like this is traditional
just before you
finance,
start,
right? This guy is the deputy managing director of the Central Bank of Singapore. Listen to what he says.
Represents the most significant opportunity to reap the full benefits of asset tokenization. So on the one hand, there's the public blockchain. It has a global network, right, which is there, but for accountability reasons, right, and governance reasons, you can't reasonably expect, regulated FIs to put high-value transactions through on a daily basis. Then on the other hand,
and he's talking about wholesale CBDC. They're basically trying to reinvent the wheel. This is his project called Global Layer 1. Sounds familiar? Layer 1.
pretty much.
And they're like building, they're trying to build Bitcoin again, right? They're trying to build the first layer to create interoperability between central banks around the world, a global system, because they don't have it and it doesn't work. And they have a few projects that they've been experimented with. One of them, namely, is Enbridge, for example, but it's only a few countries, and they have politics between them that they don't want to collaborate everyone with everyone. You have the BRICS and you have these and that. And the BIS is trying to be like the big daddy of everyone to coordinate between them. And so this is 24 financial institutions, what he calls FIs, that came together with the GL1, the global layer 1. It's a multi-year, no, like it's going to take them a few years, multi-year initiative to develop standards, practices, and principles of digital infrastructure for tokenized assets for the transformation of the financial industry. Layer 1, right? They can just come to Satoshi and take what he's built, but no,
This is
you can't
exactly
expect us to do that, right?
It's exactly like the intranets that were built when the
the
internet
internet
was there
came to
already.
be. Yes. It's so funny. And here, I have many examples to show of how different countries are coming out with their, paving the way to that kind of digital monetary system, whether it's with wholesale CBDC or with stable coins or with tokenization. And the EU continues with the retail CBDC and the digital distributed ledger. They have like 48 countries participating in that, and they continue with the digital euro, which is a CBDC. There's so much happening on that front, and each country is kind of having their own flavor. They're like taking it to their own direction, but they're really just like experimenting. Everyone is experimenting. And to me, it just feels, as I'm collecting this data and this information, it just feels like they're desperate. Like they don't know what to do. They don't know what's going to work, and they needed to be permission. They needed to be with identity. So they're trying to reinvent the wheel and create those monetary systems that we are already using for the past 15 years, right? And some of them are getting a bit disheartened, like this guy from the Israeli central bank saying, we've been working on it for the past 3 or 4 years, but if no other country is going to launch it, the retail CBDC, then we are not going to launch it. But I promise you, he says, that if we do launch it, then it's not going to be with your details. So there's going to be a level of privacy there.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we're not, of course, and we're not going to know anything about your transactions, which is complete bollocks.
Yeah.
They're like But the funny thing is, the pushback from the public is working because, and they're saying it, like this guy is the central banker, the governor of the Central Bank of Thailand. So take a look what he's saying.
Way that the use case are much clearer, and also that the downside and the risks of wholesale BC are so much lower. So a much more compelling case for taking wholesale CBDC to production.
Right, and this leads me perfectly to my kind of conclusion. I mean, there's a lot more material in this presentation, but we'll just have to cut it short. My conclusion is that the latest announcement from Trump in the US about no way, Jose, that there's going to be CBDC under my watch, I think that's no coincidence because they understand the public sentiment. They understand that people don't want their, too much overreach into their property and into their assets. So they're saying what people want to hear. Okay, no CBDC, but we are continuing to advance our national stablecoin, right? And they are doing that. So dollar-backed stablecoins, like you heard David Sachs say at the beginning, we're working on that. We think it's great. And then the right question comes up. So what's the big difference between a regulated stablecoin to a CBDC? Is there such a big difference? Because with the level of control that the government has over regulated stablecoin platforms today and tools like chain analysis, you may not be able to stop a stablecoin transaction from happening, but you can ban it going, you can see the chain of transactions and you can then ban someone or censor them, or so it's similar to a bank account, right? Just the same way that you can censor a bank account. So we're back to the same place we started from, right? In a way. So I think we have to be very while we can be very happy about SAB 121 and banks bringing in Bitcoin and all that, and the strategic Bitcoin reserve, we have to continue being vigilant about the fact that the government is creating or will be creating a situation where they can have control over our KYC Bitcoin to an extent. And we have to be smart about it. We have to be smart about using what's ours. And self-custody is the first pillar in that. Yeah, I'll show maybe just like one more example with Russia, right? So you see like Putin saying, who can ban Bitcoin? Nobody can ban Bitcoin. Like, yeah, Bitcoin is unstoppable, right? And everyone gets excited and we're all so happy. But then the next thing you see, this is from today or yesterday. Russia proposes registry to track Bitcoin mining hardware. It's all going in the same direction. We allow you as long as we can have some level of control over it. So that's the trajectory. That's the sentiment that I'm feeling. You don't have to be a genius to see that. You just have to kind of connect the dots together. Yeah. So and you'll see more and more of this ridiculous shit coming down. They'll try everything, just like they're trying, retail CBDC, wholesale CBDC, stable coins. They're going to try meme coins, shit coins. Central African Republic, they created a meme coin as well. And they started with having Bitcoin as a legal tender. I think it was a couple of years ago. And then they took it off. And then they allowed crypto and shit coins. And now they have their own meme coin. And they're all going to fucking fall on their faces. We know that. And it's going to be super entertaining. Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah, I told you so. Like, seriously, just get your popcorn, take your Bitcoin to self-custody, do inner work, shadow work, and spiritual and mental work to keep yourself sane, do physical work to keep yourself healthy, go to the sun, and just enjoy the show. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
What else can we do?
It's a great movie.
Right? It's the best show in town. You have El Salvador doing like the most sane thing of all. And of course, this is not perfect either because they now have repealed the legal tender, but still it's the closest thing we have to having like some sane government in a way.
But at least they can stack more now thanks to IMF.
Right. They could, depending on the conditions of the loan. It's gradual and whatever, but maybe they can.
Looks like.
And they're
Look at
smart to
the
not talk
numbers.
about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, anyway, I think to summarize, like, you either go the CBDC regulated shit pathway where you're being controlled and monitored in every step you take, or you try and develop your wings, with Bitcoin as much as possible.
Can you guys
It's
hear
not
me
going to
now?
be easy, but it's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, grow
Can you guys
balls.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That was wonderful. I also think we should highlight the fact that programmable money is almost worse than your money in the bank account because they can put expiration date on it. They can track your carbon credits. They can like limit where you use the money. It's really complex, so it's very scary if it actually gets implemented anywhere.
Yeah, I
Very
have
scary.
a whole section in this presentation about the role of carbon and the climate agenda in the monetary system, and it's a big part. It's a big role, but we don't have time for that. But I agree with you. It's definitely a risk. The way I see it, basically, like just to conclude, that you have this spectrum of different digital monetary assets. They are going to end up with some kind of global digital monetary system that is different from fiat because it may be with more control, with more technology features, and it's going to be basically monitored like 24/7. And that's like on the extreme left side of the spectrum. And then on the extreme right side of the spectrum, I think what you have left is just barter and cash and non KYC Bitcoin, and then everything in between. So you'll have different types of tools, different types of options of how you can use money. You'll have to, depending on your level of proficiency and financial literacy and understanding, you'll be able to choose the different tools you have with different levels of risk to yourself and to what's yours. Yeah. And I really hope that it's not going to be too hard for us to continue holding on to our non KYC Bitcoin and talking about it. I hope
Everything is
I'm
good
not
for
like,
Bitcoin, but not
I
everything
hope
is
I'm
good
wrong
for
with my
Bitcoiners.
prediction about that, but we'll see. What did you say, Stefan?
I said that everything is good for Bitcoin, but not everything is good for Bitcoiners.
That's right.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
have one more question in the
Yeah,
end.
me too. Go ahead, go for it, Swiss.
I want to give a shout out to HRF for all the amazing information that they put out there in their weekly newsletter, which I read every time I get it. They do these amazing like tracking of the different countries around the world and where they're at with either stablecoins or CBDC or the different monetary instruments. So shout out to, I think it's Nick over there and the team. They're doing really great work at HRF.
I know we're getting ready to close, but I also have one more thing I want to discuss. But do you want to go first, Swiss?
No, I'll do it last then. It's
Okay.
a light one.
Mine was this, is that sometimes I feel that society is getting exactly what we want. I mean, we are being guided by fear. Fear is the predominant voice. We sacrifice our privacy because we want to know everything that everybody does in order to protect ourselves. Like, do you think that that's a fiat mentality? Do you think that that's being like that we have brainwashed into being that way? Or do you or are we gonna evolve out of that? What do you think?
The question is for me?
Well, for all of us. Like, my question is like kind of like, will Bitcoin save us from our fear mongering mentality?
Okay, so I can start. So if, as I said before, you don't need saving.
You only
You're
need Bitcoin.
fine. You're protected. You're held. You're loved. You don't need savings. Seriously, get that thing out of your head. But really, if fear is a compass for you, it's an opportunity for you to see what is it in your life that you need to work on. When you experience fear, okay, because fear is going to be out there all the time. Like, I doubt that we're going to experience a society and a nation states and a world where they don't inflict fear on us. So just let's assume that it's always going to be there. The question is whether you take it in. And if you take it in, it's because there's something in you that is lacking or that is missing or that you're doubting or that is not, it's not complete, it's not whole. You may be carrying some past traumas with you that you haven't worked on. You may be carrying some shadows and some work that you haven't done in order to complete that. Because once you do the work, and those things continue coming at you, just imagine the Neo scene in the Matrix with the bullets, right? That
Mhm.
shit keeps coming at you. It's not stopping, but it slows down the more work you are doing. And you can actually take that bullet and go, oh, I recognize you, little fearful shit. You're not going to be long if you're going to say this thing. Poof. And then the
Mhm.
next one comes in. You go, oh, I know you too, you little shit. You're going to be ostracized for society if you don't follow the trail that everyone follows. And you go, fuck you. And so on and so on. So if you are doing the work, then you don't let that fear come in.
Mhm.
Okay. Or you may experience it, but it will be a reminder for you of the work that you've already done. You go, oh, I remember you. Hey, fear, how you going? Like,
Mhm.
I feel you, because it's an emotion you cannot try and push away. If something comes up, you should feel it. Let it come in, and give it the space, the time to be there, and it will go away because it's only energy. It will come in and it will go out. But you don't let it control you. You control it. You go, hey, I experience fear right now. It's not I am fearful. It's not, it's you have fear now. This is the energy that now came in. Okay, there's some kind of fear, but I know that one, I recognize it, and if I don't, then I stop to do some work, and then I keep going. And this is like going to the gym. It's a daily practice. If you don't do the work to find the way that is comfortable for you or that you like, I don't know, like going to some kind of spiritual teachers, or doing yoga or meditation or taking mushrooms or whatever works for you, I don't know, retreats, whatever. But do the work. Go to a psychologist. Do something, whatever you like. Read books that will help you manage this
Mhm.
meat suit, because this thing that you're carrying with you, it is becoming, it's like a RAM, in a computer. If you don't release the memory there, then it overflows, and it's harder and harder to operate. So the more you do work, the more space you can make for new things to be born, for new creations. That's how I see it. So you're just like, it's like taking a car to a garage. You're doing the maintenance work that you need to do on yourself. And that fear from the outside will never go away. It may go away from the inside out.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, the only fear I have is that I don't have enough Bitcoin. You know.
Good. You're in an awesome place. I know, I get that one too from time to time. I wake up and I'm
Yeah.
like, shit, I don't have anything else to
Yeah.
liquidate.
Yeah. Yeah. The FOMO is really the worst of all fears.
I'm like, maybe I should cash out this MicroStrategy and put it in Bitcoin. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm actually considering selling the hamster of my daughters. They might disagree to buy more Bitcoin.
So why don't you share with the audience how they can find you and support you, Evra?
Sure. So the best way to support me would be to watch my podcast and share the episode that you're watching. That would go such a long way. I would really appreciate it if you watch any of the episodes you like. I've done 65 episodes so far. and I'm planning to do many more. You can find the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, on Fountain, on Twitter. The full episodes are there. And you can share them and put a comment, and that would be really great for me. You can also zap me on Noster if you want after you watch an episode. That would be cool. Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter and everywhere else. Basically, I'm everywhere. Except I'm even on TikTok, which I hate. Like I hate. I'm not like physically there. I never go in there, but like when I share my short clips, I put it there as well through a tool, through a third-party tool, so that I don't have to look at it. Yeah, just because people
Yeah.
are there, but I really don't. I'm too old for that shit.
Well, come on, we're 21, so always gonna be. I would have one more question for you
Yeah.
about Bitfluencers, because you have the CMO background, marketing background. So what do you think of Bitfluencers, the Bitcoin marketing team? What do you think of the project? What, based on what you have seen and
So I must admit that I don't know exactly what you do, but if I'm guessing, then you're an agency for Bitcoin companies to work with, right? Marketing agency, right? Okay. Like just the name Bitfluencers is a bit like confusing for me, because I didn't know if it's an influencers agency or it's just a general marketing agency with different types of services. The Bitcoin marketing team, right? So I think here we go again. That screen, it's amazing.
The camera's doing that today. Usually everything's fine.
It's just a reminder for how old I am. If I remember this, from my childhood, the that screen, that TV screen, just says how old I am. I'm very old.
Yeah, I can relate.
I'm very old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's great. Bitcoin companies are not doing great work in marketing themselves. And this is very general statement, right? Like it's not fair of me to even say that because it's very generalistic, but on a whole, when I'm watching that space, I'm kind of going like, it's a shame that they're not doing more and faster. I don't want to judge because I don't know the level of funding that they get from their investors. So they may be in a tough situation where they don't have enough funding to justify good marketing for themselves. However,
funding goes to shitcoinery, actually. That's the thing.
Right. So there's a lot of fiat in shitcoinery, of course. But
they have massive
in the Bitcoin
marketing
space,
budgets.
it's quite different. And I think that a lot of Bitcoin companies are relying on the fact that their product will be so great that everyone will want to use it. And I'm sorry to burst another bubble today. That's not how it works in the world today. It's not yet, right? It's not enough if you have a really great product. It's not enough because of the world we live in that is so noisy, that there is such competition on attention, because of how much shitcoinery and scumbaggery there is in the world, not necessarily even in the Bitcoin space or the shitcoin space, in everything. Like you have so much noise and scamming and fraudulent activity that really discerning between the legit stuff to the scams is so difficult for the common person. So the Bitcoin companies thinking or hoping that they will shine because their product is so good is an illusion. It's an illusion at worst, and it's a wishful thinking at best. Like it's not gonna if you're not gonna invest in a good marketing strategy, you're probably not gonna get the audience you want.
Correct.
So in other words, what she's saying is you all gotta come and hire us to help you out.
They didn't pay me to say that, but no. I mean, you need a marketing agent. You need marketing, period. First of all, you need marketing. And if you don't have, and here's another, I can talk about this for another hour, but we need a different session just for that.
Yeah, let's do that.
About marketing. Let's do that. But I'll just say one last thing, one last thought.
I approve of this
that
message.
if now I forgot, but let me think. Well, it was a good one. Here's the thing. It's a misconception that a lot of founders and entrepreneurs have about their young startup, they think that they can have one marketing person who will also do business development, partnerships, and maybe sales, and maybe customer support as well at the beginning, because we're very small and the team is only 5 people. And you take one person and you hope that that person will also create leads for you. Good luck with that.
I'm about
Right?
to be disconnected.
That's not going to happen. So marketeers are not magicians.
And build a CRM system also.
And implement the CRM system in less than 3 months, right? All of that.
Yeah.
So
Eyes closed.
yeah. So founders have the wrong idea about the proper function of marketing, how it should be built, how a team should be built, and if you don't have the funds or the need to recruit more than one marketeer at your first stage, which is completely normal and natural, it's fine, then you should definitely outsource some of that work because you need that work done. Exactly. And it's a really tough lesson that a lot of entrepreneurs learn when they try and take one person and put all that stuff on top of that one person and they fail miserably. I saw it so many times. It's unsustainable.
Yep, I agree.
We lost Stefan. I think he was trying to warn us, but it's okay. Thank you, Efrat, for sharing your knowledge with us.
I didn't say go to my blog on Substack. I have a blog.
Yes.
Yes, you can see on my Twitter profile, there's a link. Click that link. You see all my links, including my blog, and you can sign up and get an email. If you're old like me, then you may like emails still and not TikTok.
Come
Then
on.
you can get an email every time there is a
21,
podcast
Efrat,
episode.
we're 21. Not a day older than 21. Remember.
I'm gonna be 45 next month.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, happy early birthday. Happy early birthday.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you. I'm
if it
going to
makes
celebrate my birthday in Australia at a Bitcoin conference.
But if it makes you feel any better, I'm older than you. Much older than you.
Are you?
Yeah.
No, now I feel like in good company.
I'm going to be 40 next month as well, so
You're still
Yay!
young.
we're all in the same boat. Forever 21 at heart.
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah, the physical age, we don't
And
care.
you gorgeous.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to share, subscribe, like, and follow us for more engaging content about Bitcoin and most based companies in our ecosystem. Bitfluencer is a dedicated Bitcoin marketing team of 21 Bitcoin-loving plebs that can spread your signal across the world. Visit 21bitfluencers.com and empower your community. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Efrat.
Thank you so much, Efrat. It was so great to have you. Thanks,
Thank
Danny.
you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And let's have the marketing episode as
Sure.
a follow-up.
We'll do
That would
that.
be cool. All right. Thanks. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.